Welcome back to the new adventures of the monad. We have cycled through 6 rounds on the third, the moon chain. We now get to the final round of the moon chain. The 7th round of a chain differs from the preceding rounds in that, as the stream of life vacates any given globe and passes into the next globe in the series, the vacated globe goes into a state of quiescence on the way to disintegration. Further, some of the inhabitants of each globe, being incapable of further evolution on the chain, pass away from the chain altogether and await re-embodiment in the next chain. The remainder of the group goes on to the next globe in the series. The orange-hued group, numbering more than 2 million, left globe A, which was on the causal plane, in this manner. They had so shut themselves in their mental shell and had so starved the germ of their emotional bodies that they could not safely descend further. Moreover, they were far too proud to wish to do so. Their causal bodies were a rigid shell, not a living, expanding matrix. To allow them to pass to globe B, the mental globe, would have led to a fatal hardening of the lower mental principle. They were, as we have already discussed, very clever, but quite selfish. The Manu was dissatisfied with these orange-hued people and did his best for them by shipping them off out of the chain. Later, we shall meet some of them again in Atlantis as lords of the dark face, priests of the dark worship, leaders against the white emperor, and so on. I warned you about this. For the remainder of the third chain, they remain in the interchain realm. There were also some other monads who had attained the level of Arhat or 46 self, who left the moon chain from globe A. The yellow group, who were less than 2 million in number, together with the remainder of the inhabitants of globe A, passed on to globe B, the mental globe. With them were some monads who had reached the Arhat level 46 on globe A. The level of Arhat was the success set for the third chain. These Arhats became adepts, 45 selves or masters, on globe B. The monads of the yellow group were shipped off from globe B because they had not sufficiently nourished the emotional side of their nature to make the formation of a reasonably developed emotional body possible for them on globe C, the emotional globe. Their willingness to obey their superiors stood them in good stead, so that in Atlantis they were the priests of the White Temple, gradually forming emotional bodies of an appropriate type. We shall see later that both orange and yellow groups entered the Earth chain in its 4th round, being far too advanced to take part in the earlier rounds. The principle seems to be that in each globe it is necessary to develop the qualities that is supposed to be developed to their full expression on the next globe. There was another group of entities who had attained the Arhat level 46, who left the moon chain on globe B. Coming to globe C, the emotional globe, once more a small number of monads who had reached the Arhat level 46 left the chain by one or other of the 7 paths. One group of these is of special interest to us because they form part of one division of the Lords of the Moon, the group called the Baheshat Pitris in the Secret Doctrine. They were engaged in superintending the evolution of forms in the Earth chain. This group had individualized in the 4th round among a city population where, being surrounded by more advanced people, they had been stimulated into more rapid growth. On leaving globe C, they migrated towards the region in space where the Earth chain was already building, where they were later joined by others who also dedicated themselves to this class of building work. On globe D, the moon, things became very different. Why? Because when the time for the death of the globe was approaching, the majority of the inhabitants and most of the animals left the chain and passed into the lunar nirvana to await transference to the Earth chain. when this could be made ready for them. A very small population was thus left to continue its evolution on the three remaining globes, E, F, and G. The group of monads that we have been especially following, known as the group of servers, showed marked distinct improvement on globe D. The causal body is well defined, the intelligence more developed, and affection for the superiors, and by superiors we mean those monads who were there to guide them, had deepened and intensified. Instead of a passion, it had now become a settled emotion, which was their most distinguished characteristic. Although the instinct of service was still blind and half-conscious, they had the desire to serve and to please their superiors to whom they had devoted themselves. It was now the dominating motive of their lives. In the future, this remained their characteristic through the long series of incarnations that awaited them on the earth chain, where they would do much pioneering work. Their physical bodies were now bright blue instead of the muddy brown as before. During their last incarnation on the moon, they were brought together. The process of consolidation had occurred for a considerable period of time before this. By guiding them to rebirth in specific communities, the ties between the groups of monads were strengthened. They consequently became ready to do whatever they were told and to go wherever they were sent. This was not blind obedience, but if you want to serve the hierarchy, you have to do their bidding without question. These servers could be distinguished by a slight downpouring of matter from higher planes, which caused a small expansion of the thread of unity 46 matter connecting the unity 46 and the causal 47-1 permanent atoms. Visually, the connection was a little broader above than below, like a small narrow funnel. Large number of other people, far more intelligent than this group, did not show this characteristic. Why? Because it is connected with the germinal desire to serve, absent from those otherwise more intellectually advanced people. This group of servers contained many types of monads. They were not all appearing on only one ray. They individualized by one or other of the three right ways, either will, wisdom, or activity, having been stimulated by devotion to a superior monad. The method of individualization merely caused a subdivision within the main group, which affected the length of the interval between death and rebirth. The length of time between incarnation did not affect their ability to act as servers. At the head of the group of servers stood many who had now become masters. High above them were many who were already second selves, arhats, who again received their orders from far mightier beings. The Manu of the seventh root race was in charge, carrying out the instructions of the seed Manu. Why this connection? Because it would be the seed Manu that would hand the products of the third chain over to the root Manu of the fourth chain, our earth chain. The servers, as they died, for the last time on the moon chain, having reached the level required on globe D, were gathered on the mental plane in what is known as the Divachan, where they remained for a very long time. Here they dwelt in a subjective bubble of thought, which they populated with those they had loved, notably the more advanced monads to whom they were especially devoted. This rapt devotion greatly helped their development, bringing out their higher qualities, so that later they were more receptive to the influences which played upon them in the interchain realm. The monads we had been discussing there were included in the general mass of monads, which Blavatsky called solar pitris. Two groups of adepts are worth mentioning from those that migrated from the third to the fourth chain. The first group included Master Moya and Kuthumi, the future Manu and Bodhisattva of the sixth root race on the earth. Others are now Chohans and Masters, together with many of the servers who are now pupils of Masters or approaching that level. These seem to belong to the subgroup which has a 700-year interval between lives. The other group included many who are now Masters and pupils, all belonging to the subgroup with the 1,200-year average interval between incarnations. These two groups contain many, if not all, of those who are to form the heavenly man. This is the final product of any chain. In the next presentation, we shall deal in greater detail with the classes of monads who left globe D on the moon chain, arranging them in a table according to their grades. Some of those with primitive causal bodies, which were known as the line type, passed on to emotional globe E for further evolution and became basket works, thus joining the class which had been above them. Remember, line and baskets are descriptions of how the causal bodies of those monads appeared to the casual observer. These bodies were built slowly by the monads themselves, not handed to them on a plate, as they later were in the fourth chain. Similarly, some basket works passed on to globes E, F, and G, and there they formed a complete causal body, joining the class above their own. Globes E, F, and G seem to have been used as a kind of forcing house for special cultures, for enabling some to reach the path or to attain Arhat 46, who, though near it, could not accomplish it on globe D, and to enable some who were approaching a higher stage to enter it. These planets should be thought of as centers rather than globes. Their populations were small, as has already been described, since the bulk of the inhabitants, both human and animal, had been shipped off to the interchain realm. Their number was further progressively diminished by sending off batches from each globe as it passed into quiescence. Those who were shipped off from globe E consisted of some already on the path who had become Arhats 46, some basket works who had completed the causal body, and some lines who had become basket works. When these had left globe E, the remainder, consisting of those below the Arhat 46 level, who could bear the strain of further forcing, and so were carried on to the mental globe F. Amongst these were the preeminent monads who later became the Lord Gautama Buddha and the Lord Maitreya. They had dropped out of the seventh round of the second chain, not being able to bear the forcing process on globes E, F, and G of that chain. They entered the moon chain on globe D in the fourth round as one young souls, and on globe F took their vow to become Buddhas. The arrangements then, however, were not the same as those on earth today. There was a kind of heavenly council in a heavenly world, what the Buddhists today call the Sukhavati. The great being to whom they made their vow, and who, as the acting Buddha, accepted it, we have met before. It was Dipankara, who came from the fourth chain of the Venus scheme and who was one of the general staff of the Solar Logos' team. Where to now? Well, in the next presentation, we will wrap up our look at the moon chain by examining what the products of this chain were. Thank you.